Hey guys, in the past I've briefly shown you guys some vintage technical publications that I've picked up at estate sales, swap meets, eBay, whatnot. Well, I had occasion recently to take a closer look at some, and I found some articles I thought were really interesting I'd like to share with you. Now also, I took a look at worldradiohistory.com where they have a lot of similar technical publications available, but I didn't see these. So I went ahead and ordered up a flatbed scanner that's going to arrive here in a few days. I'm going to make some high quality scans of this stuff that I will make available on my Patreon account. So let's get into it. Some of these are Philco publications, some are Sylvania news, and some other stuff mixed in. So right off the bat, when I opened this one, I saw an article on series string television, and they go in depth talking about what that means and various different ways the tubes were wired up in series, including thermistors when the tube filaments don't add up to 120, and then some creative tricks that are done sometimes, like here they have a 12AX4 that has a 600 milliamp filament current, and that's connected up to some tubes that have 300 milliamp current, and if you put two in parallel, then you get your 600. Or in this case, the 6J6 is 450, so they threw a 43 ohm resistor in parallel with it, and then we got a couple more 300 in parallel, and over here some more 450s. So you see some of the crazy lengths they went to avoid using a power transformer but keep all the tubes happy and provide some current limiting on power up. Now, the cool thing about these Sylvania publications is they made tubes, and they made picture tubes. So here's an introductory article on the 5AXP test CRT that you've seen me use in so many projects, and they talk about its design and its use and its development. What's cool about this is I just bought one. I knew it was a test CRT. I knew we could sub for it. I could look up the specs, and I've used it. But they go into, because they invented it, they created it, they go into a lot more depths about what all it can do, how it can be used, some tricks, some tips, which is all really, really cool to see. I haven't read all of it, but one thing you've seen me struggle with a bunch of times is when you use this in a set that has a focus coil, because it's self-focusing, and I've had to either disconnect the focus coil or unmount it or just deal with a blurry image. So they do talk about that a bit, and the centering magnets and stuff you might have to contend with. I don't know about you, but I find this stuff fascinating. Things that we've just seen and make assumptions about or take for granted, but this is when they were new. So flying saucers, what are they talking about? It's just a little plastic cap you see on the ends of new CRTs to protect the pins. And this was a new thing because these are for newer CRTs, specifically they don't have the big bakelite base on them where the pins just come right out of the glass, or it's more important to protect them from getting damaged. So these new protective pin cushions are being merchandised to Sylvania's dealers and distributors. So I just thought that was interesting that yeah, I mean, all the stuff that we see, there was a time when it was brand new and it had just been invented and needed to be explained to service techs about what they were and what they were for. Or this, new tube type, the 6CS6. It's using all the 17-inch predictors. So I'm very common with this tube. I never gave it a second thought. But here is why it was invented, what it can do, why it was a big improvement. Another really good article, realistic tube testing. I see this come up all the time in forums like the Antique Radio forum, where people talk about what's the best tube tester, how do I calibrate it, hey, I'm getting different readings on different tube testers. They talk about that. what are your realistic expectations, especially when you're using an emission type tester versus some laboratory grade transconductance type tester. And talk a bit about what are you actually testing, what's acceptable, what's realistic. And so on and so on. Another great article, another tube that I just take for granted. It's used in Zenith, a lot of Zeniths, because they had a hand in inventing it. I don't know, I used to think that Zenith invented it, but Zenith doesn't, well, until they bought Roland, I guess they didn't really make tubes themselves. But I think they might have worked with Sylvania to develop it. Point being, this was a really cool tube, and it was a really innovative feature. It basically combines 3 tubes into one for FM sound detection using a gated beam. So it combines the functions of a limiter, a discriminator, and the first audio amp in one tube. Very notable feature of sets that use this, they have a noise control. And they typically, the alignment instructions, they say just tune to a station and adjust that control for the best sound, rather than doing a swept IF type alignment, because this tube combines a whole bunch of stuff, and there's that classic control. It's in the cathode. Usually it's a wire wound type control because there's a bit of current that goes through it, and that is your noise adjustment. It'll say just adjust it so the sound is the best, the clearest sounding. Hey, here's another new test bench CRT, the 8XP4. You've seen me use so many times before. Here's another great article, Factors Affecting Life of Horizontal Output Tubes. So we talk about things like the efficiency adjustment to minimize the cathode current. I show their quality assurance lab and how the internal construction of them and how they've made improvements to increase the life of the horizontal output tube. Great article on people out. I've tried to explain this myself a couple times in videos. How does the flyback work? What is the flyback? What do the various elements do? What's it all about? Great article about that. There's your sweep and your ringing and what the damper tube does and the retrace time and all that great stuff. Excellent read. Another popular topic, the introduction of the Bondage shield pitcher tube, which led to cataracts. So that is where you take a piece of glass and you essentially glue it to the pitcher tube to provide implosion protection and protect the pitcher tube from being struck by external objects. And I talk about the pros and cons. So when you have the separate piece, yes, you can get dust collecting inside, but there's no space for dust to collect when it's bonded right to the glass. And here's an illustration. And it looks like they're talking about lacquer and epoxy to attach it. But of course, decades later, that starts to deteriorate and you get the cataracts forming from the outside edges and moving in. So, but they never considered that back then. Some good practical repair tips as well. For example, if you got a damaged tube socket in a printed circuit type thing like a Predicta, they suggest rather than taking out the board, removing the damaged socket, taking all the pins out, break it apart, leave the bottom pins in there, take your new socket and solder it from the top side into the remains of the old socket. And hey, here is the third and final, I believe, of all the bench test CRTs, the 8YP4. So one more thing I really want to show you. Should have some bookmarks in here. But really, all these articles are great. This is a great era to get this from too, because they were introducing new things. Color TV, UHF, the bonded safety glass. Here, this. A topic I've mentioned many times, which I think deserves a lot more attention than it gets, it seems, from other restorers. Picture tube screen burns. They show a really magnified area, and they talk about specifically, this is the one on the left is an aluminized picture tube. Yes, aluminized picture tubes can get burns from the electron beam. What are they talking about? This isn't the ion trap being misadjusted. This is from problems in the deflection circuit, or when you turn the set off and it collapses to that super bright dot. If there's no protection circuit in there, or something's not working quite right, when that beam collapses and it has enough energy, it starts to damage the phosphor surface. Now, in extreme cases too, they mention if you restore something, forget to put the yoke back on the neck, or there's something wrong with the connections to the yoke, but you have high voltage, yeah, that will very quickly damage your picture tube, but also from repeated shutoffs where it collapses. I noticed that especially after I restore a set and I got all these brand new caps in there, new tubes, and everything is working really good, maybe even better than original because the new parts have better specs, that beam can be especially bright. And I've been looking for a good circuit or circuits to do a beam cutoff on power off. And I got a suggestion from somebody recently that if you turn the brightness up before you turn the set off, it will bleed the charge off faster when you turn it off and reduce that effect. And that's cool, and I don't doubt it works. But you also got to remember to do that. And when you watch a set again, you have to turn the brightness down, so you're going to be constantly manipulating that brightness control. I think it'd be really cool to find a good circuit that bleeds that away. I was briefly talking with some other guys on the Antique Radio Forum about it, and there were some proposed circuits, but nothing that I've tried using or would retrofit into vintage sets. So the problem is there's various designs, whether you feed the video into the grid or the cathode, how things are biased. But I think it's definitely worth exploring because picture tubes are so hard to get right now, and even if they get rebuilt, meaning a new gun assembly, rephosphoring as a whole, re-aluminizing is a whole nother matter, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. So you really want to protect that phosphor surface. So that's some Sylvania info. Now let's switch gears to Filco, who did work closely with Sylvania, but they had some excellent publications. Some of these have been scanned and are available, but some of what I'm going to show you I have not been able to find online. So they had various publications. One is the Service and Accessory Merchandiser, which was showcasing new products and tools that dealerships might want to promote. And then there are service publications. And they're just fun to read because they have cartoons in them. And some of you may have seen me post a photo from this. You could mail in ideas you've had and you could get money. $10 for the best ideas, but I think they also had a $5 and a $2 tier. So what else I think is cool is that I've come to like Philco more and more because they really seem to care about their service people, service centers and technicians. And they have a lot of articles on how to use their own service equipment. Lots of stuff about the 7008, their sweep generator, the all-in-one scope, sweep, marker generator. Fortunately, I have not been able to get mine to work, but it's cool to see them talk about it so much, including some of their scopes and their meters and whatnot, and lots of tips on how to use them. And it's fun to read too. Oh, there's another publication, the Philco Serviceman. So they had conventions, they gave out awards, they had uniforms, lapel pins, signs, all kinds of fun stuff. And they also include all sorts of tips and tricks on how to work on these. So you can see they have these, they would issue awards and give out plaques to people for outstanding service. There's a $10 award somebody got for a bench idea. Looks like it has a sliding section out in the middle. It's a Jim Dandy service bench. Oh, brilliant. So, if you've ever tried to take a chassis in or put one back into a cabinet, there's bolts from below. I often will just hang it over the edge of a table, get two of them out, flip it around, and get the other two out. This guy just designed a workbench that has a hole in the middle, wide enough that you could get it all the bolts to take them out and put it back in after you service the set. Excellent idea. He got his $10 for that one. And here's one I posted a photo of about if you've got a damaged base and you need to put one back on, to attach fine wires to the tips, thread them through the base, slide it on, and remove those wires. When you heat it up to solder the pins, those wires will just fall away. So Don Weaver got $10 for that idea long before I ever had it. They had a running character in their little cartoons here, Mike Farad. So Mike Farad says, you'll see that character again and again throughout this. Mike Farad says, all roads lead to Philco factory supervised service. And what I want to show you next is an article on how to spruce up cabinets, which I was not expecting to see. There's two articles in here. One is how they made their cabinets in the first place, and then a second article on tips to touch them up out in the field. Here's how their cabinets are made. So they want to point out to you how well they constructed them with glue blocks and screws to reinforce them, and how they did vibration tests to make sure the joints would be sound and all that. Various techniques, but what I really liked was finish. A commonly debated topic online is how did they actually do them? Did they use grain fillers? Did they use stain? Did they use toner lacquers and whatnot? Talk about it right here. Finishing on a single Filco radio or television cabinet requires many intricate steps and delicate processes. It's a discussion I had with somebody too when they saw me go the lengths I went to with the grain filler and waiting days between finish coats and all that, saying, oh, there's no way they could have done that back then with the assembly lines. You got to knock them out as quickly as they can. No, it did take several days, and they talk about that and the grain fillers and whatnot. And they do say they sand. So staining begins only after the cabinets were completely sanded. Stains used by Filco are made of the most unusual and expensive dyes, non-resistant and of the type that penetrates deeply into the wood fiber so the color remains unchanged throughout the years. Now, I do know for a fact they used toner lacquer in addition to stain, but apparently they did stain these. Dried overnight. The stained cabinet is entered with a very thin coat of crystal clear lacquer allowed to dry and then again delicately sanded. So there you go. You sand it, you stain it, you seal it, you sand it again. And then they used grain filler. And they used a material called towel, which is made out of seaweed. I've tried using burlap in the past to get off the excess grain filler and work it in. They let it dry a minimum of 16 hours for the grain fillers. It took them days to finish a cabinet back then, just like it does now. After the sealer, so after the filler, they would seal it again and again lightly sand it. And another coat of sealer applied to the whole cabinet. Now the cabinet gets first coat of final lacquer, containing a form of silica which cuts down excess gloss. So they did use semi-gloss finish. That's another commonly debated topic. Was it all clear and it got dull over time? Or did they use semi-gloss lacquer? They used semi-gloss lacquer, at least on some of them. Again, it's allowed to dry. Another final coat of lacquer. Dried again. Hand rubbed, sanded, rubbed again. Finally, it's done. The finishing of blonde cabinets requires even more process and more time. They would bleach it using an alkali peroxide solution, 10 times more powerful than that in domestic use. So they did bleach the wood. I've argued with people about that. So, I was wrong. I thought it was always like a limed finish put over it, but no, they would bleach the mahogany, I presume, or walnut, and then allowed to dry for 24 hours, and then sanded, and then sprayed, and so on, and so on, and so on. So, not a simple process. at all. Alrighty. Shop practices and service techniques, cabinet refinish and touch-up. Some of this is pretty similar to what you've seen me do before. They suggest these tools. Well, first off, most repairs are not difficult to do, but like all service work, there are three prerequisites: the right tools and materials, the know-how, and experience. Fortunately, all three items are easy to obtain. I don't know about that. Here's the tools they suggest: an alcohol lamp, sterno heater, or electric hot plate, burn-in knife. That's something you don't see get talked about much. It seems to me a lost art. It's something I haven't tried doing, but I'm aware of it, is to use burn-in sticks. So when there's a chip or a gouge, they look kind of like crayons, and you get a hot knife and you melt it and you work it in and then buff it out to fill in the defects. They come in a variety of colors. You pick the color that matches it. Then I talk about touch-up brushes, and then rubbing compound, rubbing oil, sandpaper, sealer, stain, clear lacquer, varnish remover, lacquer thinner, lacquer sealer. Again, the burn-in stick, steel wool, spirit powders. Now, these are not that familiar to me. So black, brown, orange. I'm guessing you blend these powders, maybe mix it with the shellac to get the color match. But then they go into all how you can do it. Some of this is similar to stuff I've done. So it's the renovating dull finishes. Place a small amount of rubbing compound on a clean cloth and rub the finish with the grain. So they just buff out the finish to get a shine back to it. I presume a finish that's gotten a lot of fine scrapes and become dull over time, or scratches and whatnot. We talk about using that burn-in knife. And you can still get these. Mohawk makes burn-in sticks. I think they have a whole kit. Not exactly cheap, but yeah, there are a few. Rockler probably sells this stuff too. Checked or cracked lacquer. That's what I'm generally dealing with when I touch up cabinets, because that's what happens over time. So sand down the entire section with 320 dry sandpaper. That's typically what I do too. 220 if it's really bad, but typically 320. And then they overspray it with clear lacquer. So back then, that's what they were also recommending to do. Allow it to dry for a full hour and then do it again. And then they use that rubbing compound and oil to spruce it up to get that shine back. Talk about lacquer shrinkage. Yeah, that's a drag over time. I'll be getting back to finishing off my refinishing series for beginners soon, because I want something I want to show you. Is you can think you got a new lacquer finish, absolutely perfect, did everything just right. Look at it a year later. I almost guarantee you there's going to be some shrinkage issues and some fine marks are going to be present following the grain lines. And I got some tips about how to use a spray gun. And then there's a whole lot of tips, tricks, and suggestions for using that 7008 sweep visual alignment generator. Tips on how to organize your folders in a file cabinet, more about the visual aligner, and so on and so on. This was a good article too. How to eliminate the shadow you may get in a picture, like in a corner or on one edge, and they talk about how to get the yoke positioned right, and maybe make some little tweak adjustments to the yoke to get things adjusted just right. I want to throw out there that I realize now I've been wrong or a little bit misinformed or made some invalid assumptions over the years. Well, because I wasn't alive back then, and I was parroting some of what I read online, but things about like the using semi-gloss lacquer or them using stain versus toner lacquer. I have no problem admitting I was wrong on some of these topics. Now this is some Motorola service info. I don't think I've ever seen these before, like the old Motorola logo as a Very stylized squiggle M. First part of this seems to be on auto radio stuff. And then, because these are from 54, 55, they get into color TV because that was the hot new topic, the new thing coming out. These don't seem to be quite as well organized. They're easy to read through as the Sylvania or Filco, but there's still plenty of good stuff. When I talk about early color, I'm talking like spring and summer of 54. Motorola goes on location to test color TV. I didn't realize it was going to take about a decade to really catch on at the time, but there's a lot in here. Oh, and the poor ill-conceived, well, maybe not ill-conceived, but badly executed 19 VP22. It's a rectangular color picture tube that did not work out so well. That's a topic for another day. So I will be scanning the best of what I find in these and putting it up for my Patreons. Hope you guys found this interesting. That is all for now. Thanks for watching.